Welcome back to Rutland Water. Today we're at a spot called the Finches. It's on the opposite bank of the reservoir from where I fished last time, but we know there are plenty of fish in this north arm. This is a lovely spot for this particular wind. It's a southwesterly. The temperatures have gone up a little bit. I haven't fished for the last 4 days because it's got very cold. It's warmed up today. This is a great spot, so without further ado, let's get fishing. I don't think we'll get a fish on the first cast like last time, but you never know. The thing that's really good about this spot is you can cast the line out into the deeper water and then just let the flies come round naturally, really not doing much at all. It's very rare that I'll even pull the line. All I'll do is put a mend in. If I'm doing anything, I'll do a very slow figure of 8 just to keep the tension on the line. There are some flies in the air, so I'm hopeful the fish will be feeding on some kind of natural fly life. I've got a new recording approach. I've got body cam, I've got widescreen cam, and I'm using a separate microphone with a windshield to try and get rid of some of that extraneous noise that we get sometimes. I really like this wind because it's allowing the fly to come around quite naturally. I may even put a floating fly on the point and fish the top foot or so of the water because I have a feeling the fish will be quite high up today. I'm hoping that we keep this cloud cover. I don't think I'll have to wade today because the reservoir is really quite high. I'm not going to mess around here. I'm using 3 imitative patterns this morning. I will keep changing my flies periodically because if there are fish here and I'm using the right tactics, I will get them. But it's quite easy to fish the same fly for ages because you've caught something on it before when it's just not working. Oh, that was a fish. Came straight out of the water. That means there are fish moving up in these wind lanes. I just hope that they decide to come in to the shallower water. Now that was pretty much the perfect cast. This is a new line that I bought last year for bank fishing and it's incredibly good. It was probably one of the cheapest fly lines in the shop. I normally go for the most expensive ones, but I bought 2. I bought an expensive one and this one, thinking I would keep this one for bank fishing because it was cheaper, and if I replaced it, it wouldn't cost too much money. And then a more expensive one for the boat. And I've fished with this line ever since. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to give these flies probably 3 or 4 casts. Then if I don't get anything, I'll change them one at a time until I find something that's attracting the trout. There'll be plenty of trout coming past here. They'll be following the wind upwind and just feeding on anything that passes by their nose, so I'm absolutely sure the fish will be coming up this way. Obviously I've seen that one very far out, but I think they'll be here. I think they'll be close in as well. Given the weather's been cold for the last few days, I'm wondering if the cold water has kept the fish down. I'm not seeing as many flies hatching on the surface as I did last time. So I think I'm going to go and fish this famous black and green fly on the point that I use quite a lot at this time of the season. And it's a fly that I fish quite fast because it tends to sink. And in this particular spot, if it sinks, there are snags. So I feel the fish are either on the top of the water or further down. I'm going to go further down. Right, I'll take this fly off, then I'm going to go to my fly box and I'm going to grab 2 flies. This is the one I've just taken off, a little small dalbak that represents all sorts of little insects, but it's not doing the job so far. So I'm going to go and grab a couple of slightly different flies. So I'm going to grab a cormorant. This is a cormorant, which you've seen me fishing before. I'm going to put that on my jacket. And then I'm going to grab this one. This is probably my most productive early season fly. Doesn't look like anything particular, but the fish just aggressively take it if they're there. I only gave those flies 2 casts. I change my flies an awful lot when I start fishing because I do know that if they want it and they're there, they'll take straight away. So now we've got a heavier fly on. Now I'll have to bring this one in a little bit faster. So I'll alternate between fast and slow. I'll start with a nice little figure of 8. So we'll do the figure of 8 shuffle to start off with. I'm just trying to get a feel for where the bottom is here. So I want to fish quite low down to start off with, and then I'll gradually speed up the retrieve once I start hitting the bottom. Now again, this is a spot where I can really cast it in a fan shape, covering lots of different bits of water just from the same spot, because of the fact that this is a point into the deep water and the wind just happens. Now that was a bit of movement under the water there. I wonder if that was a fish. We'll soon find out. So just a little bit of a wake there. I'm going to move just a little bit down the bank because some of these little bushes are causing me a bit of grief. My line is catching on them, which is not great. I can still reach the deep water here, but I'm slightly more around the point. Right, excellent. Now that's exactly the kind of cast that I want, because the line has gone out nice and straight and it's gone into the deep water, so I can let it come around quite quietly, and then I can start to speed up the retrieve a little bit. I am seeing some ripples in the top of the water, so I'm wondering if there are maybe some fish in this area. Because I've got the lure on, I'm bringing it back quite fast. Now what I'll do quite quickly, if I don't catch fish on the bottom, I'll then switch to tactics that are on the top of the water. Now that was a fish. That was a fish that obviously followed me in and decided to grab the fly close in, so we know they are here. And I am seeing little bits of movement under the water, so I think there are fish around here. And that was definitely a take. And it followed me quite close in. A lot of tiny little buzzers around. I'm wondering if the fish maybe are feeding on the surface. Because I'm throwing quite a long line, I know I'm getting into the deep water. What I'm really trying to find is the shelf, the point at which the deep water meets the shallow water, because that's normally where the fish will sit. Oh! And that was a fish again. And that was roughly, my fly was coming past the point at which I'd seen some movement in the water. Now that indicates that they are there, but that I've got something on that they're not really interested in. So maybe that I'm too deep in the water. I'm going to try that other fly now. I'm going to put the cormorant on. And then what I'll do after this is I'll put a fly that literally floats in the surface. Now you're probably thinking, he's not giving it much of a chance. Well, I know if the fish are there, if I've got the right fly on, and I've got the flies at the right depth, that they will take. So if you stick with the same tactic, I think you miss out. I much prefer to keep changing tactics until I find the one that works. You've got a cormorant, has a little bit of flash in it, but it's not too big and ugly. Now I'm convinced I'm seeing fish just under the surface here. Absolutely convinced of it, because I keep seeing different types of ripples in the surface water, and that usually means that there are fish just under the surface. Now this fly shouldn't sink too fast, so I can fish it quite slowly, and if the fish are feeding on the surface, they should find the flies quite naturally. Oh, some canoeists coming up the bay. So the fishing isn't prolific today, but we've had that spell of cold weather, which has probably put an end to the fly hatches. It's probably also got the fish to go really low in the water. They're cold-blooded, so if the water's cold, they tend to sulk quite low down in the water. So I'm going to let this one just come round very gradually. I mean, the real reason I'm out today is I'm trying this new setup for filming and recording the sound. I'm hoping that we end up with a big improvement in quality. Not that I've had any complaints so far. I guess it's just an excuse to spend money on new technology toys. I mean, this is a lovely spot. Even if I'm not catching fish, this is a really nice spot to fish in. The wind direction's great. It's a lovely morning, so even if you're not catching fish, it's still a nice morning out. When you think of all those months that we were locked away last spring, I had a fabulous day fishing just a mile or so along from here at Armley Wood. Caught lots of fish, and I was really gearing up for basically spending lockdown fishing, and then basically lockdown became lockdown. We were literally locked in our houses for pretty much all the time. We could only get out for shopping or a walk once a day. It was really depressing. Nothing else seems to have worked, and I've covered a lot of water and I've covered a lot of different depths, but apart from that one take, nothing's been happening. So I'm going to switch to a floating point fly and some buzzers. I've got quite a big variety of buzzer patterns in here, no end of choice, though I tend to find that these ones tend to work very well. So I'll put a couple on my jacket, maybe put a little green one on just in case the colour's wrong, and something for the point. I'm going to take that one. This one will float, and that should do for now. So now we're going to try the floating tactics. I'm going to put a floating fly on the point, and then two buzzers suspended above it, and then I'm just going to let the flies come around naturally. This is almost like stalking tactics. We're throwing the line out and letting the flies sit in the surface film in the hope that the fish will just cruise past and grab them on the way past. I love this kind of fishing, because you don't really have to do anything. You throw the fly out and just let it come around in the current. And it's fabulous if the fish are there, because they really grab it quite ferociously. And you can fish a huge amount of water because the fly is moving all the way around. And then when you bring it in, you're bringing it over the drop-off where they may be sitting more permanently. I'm surprised that I haven't had a take today. The conditions are really, really good. I had that one early on, but I don't know whether that was a take or maybe my fly just catched the bottom. But I'm surprised there aren't any fish here. I said, it's still a nice morning out, even if the fish decide not to come out and play. Right, I'm going to move down the bank just a little bit. I'm working on the presumption that maybe there's no fish in the spot that I'm fishing, so if I fish another few feet further round, maybe there are more fish to be had there. I'm not convinced that's the case though. I mean, I think that point is as good a place to fish as any. And right, this is more shallow water. I haven't seen the guy who's fishing on the point over there catching either. Oh, that was a fish. Hey, that's it. Well, that just shows you I only moved 10 feet down the bank. So that was, all I did was move less than 10 feet down the bank, and the take was instantaneous. So I've changed tactics probably about 5 or 6 times, and that's what it's taken to find the fish. The fish are here, it's just finding the right tactic in the right spot. Now that fish, I think, was more on the drop-off. Now I think I'm reaching the drop-off easier from this spot than I was elsewhere. Got nice. This one's got a bit of beans in it as well, which is nice. I try and be careful on the boulder. These boulders are treacherous. Now, I don't know which fly this fish is taken. This is the point I really want to see the fish, because I want to find out what fly it's on. This is quite a nice fish actually. I don't think it's huge. Again, none of the fish I've been having this season have been overwintered, but this one is pulling like an overwintered fish. Again, I think it's on the floating fly. Well, the good thing about this is my season has been 100% successful. Actually, I think it's on the buzzer, which is consistent with what we've been getting them on for the last few sessions. And it's not an overwintered fish. It's a nice fish, but it's not overwintered. So I'm keeping it in the water. Yeah, there's no. If there was silver in the tail here, that would indicate that it's overwintered, and there isn't any. So we'll just get the buzzer out and get it back straight back into the water. Come on. And we shall release it nice and safely. There it goes. So that fish proved my point perfectly. I've literally had to work. It's not just been a case of coming down and catching a fish on the first cast. I've literally had to find the right flies, then I've had to find the right depth, and then the right spot. And there was something about that. I was fishing that fly almost static. That also means that in those other casts, when I felt the little tugs, it probably meant there were fish there. The other thing I've changed is I've got buzzers on now. So the only flies I'm fishing are buzzers, static buzzers, and that fish took really, really well. So I'm happy now because I've caught something. I feel that I haven't wasted my digital assets. Let's see if there's any more in here. These are actually the days that I like more. While it's great when you catch lots and lots of fish, I find it more fun when I have to work for them, because then I feel that they just haven't landed on a plate. I've had to work for them, and it's been because I've done something clever. I've done something right in terms of getting the tactics right, picking the right spot on the water, getting the right fly, getting the right depth. Now, I'm seeing some movement out there. I think there are fish in that surface film.